What if the most explosive scandal in modern American political history is being buried, right now, in plain sight? What if the people who are supposed to give you the truth are the very ones making it disappear? I need you to stop scrolling, because what's happening with the Jeffrey Epstein files right now is not just a political story. It is a story about power, about silence, about who gets protected and who gets thrown to the wolves. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what has been released, what has not been released, who is being shielded, and why the U.S. Attorney General is now under fire from both sides of the political aisle. This is bigger than most people realize. Let's take it back to the beginning, because you need context to understand the magnitude of what's happening. Jeffrey Epstein. The name alone carries weight. A wealthy financier, a convicted sex offender, a man with connections stretching from Wall Street to the White House, from London to the Caribbean. He ran what federal prosecutors described as a sprawling sex trafficking enterprise, targeting and abusing young women and girls for years. And he died, officially by suicide, in a federal prison cell in August 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. A man with that many powerful friends died before he could name them in open court. After years of pressure, bipartisan outrage, and relentless advocacy from survivors, Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a law requiring the Department of Justice to release all of its documents related to Epstein, every file, every memo, every piece of evidence, and it had to be released in a searchable, accessible format. That law passed with bipartisan support, and the clock started ticking. The deadline? December 19th, 2025. The DOJ missed it by more than a month. When the files finally dropped in early February 2026, the DOJ, led by Attorney General Pam Bondi, released what they called millions of pages of documents. But here's where it gets complicated. Here's where it gets troubling. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche confirmed on the day of the release that 3 million pages were not released. 3 million pages. The justification? Some contained personal medical information, some included graphic depictions of child abuse, some, they said, could jeopardize ongoing investigations. Those are the reasons they gave you. Whether you believe them is another question entirely. And then the mistakes started surfacing. Lawyers for Epstein's victims came forward and revealed that the document release included email addresses and nude photographs, images in which the faces and names of potential victims could be identified. The very people this law was supposed to protect were exposed. The DOJ called it technical or human error and said they had pulled down the flagged files, but the damage was already done. Survivors wrote a letter ahead of the congressional hearing calling the DOJ's release reckless and dangerous. They said, and I want you to hear these words, "This places survivors in jeopardy and sends a chilling message to others. Reporting abuse will not protect you. It will only expose you." Read that again. The survivors of one of the worst sex trafficking operations in American history are now saying they feel more at risk because of how the government handled their files. Then comes the twist that sent shockwaves through Washington. Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Blanche sent a letter to Congress last Saturday declaring that the DOJ had released, quote, all records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in its possession. They said the matter was resolved, done, closed, and they attached a list. A 6-page list of 130 names, described as government officials and politically exposed persons who appeared in the Epstein files. Now, you would think a list like that would bring some clarity. It did not. Instead, it created a firestorm, and here is why. Among the names on that list, Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, Janis Joplin. Elvis Presley died in 1977. Marilyn Monroe died in 1962, when Jeffrey Epstein was 9 years old. Janis Joplin died in 1970, when Epstein was just 17. These names appeared on a list presented to the American people alongside names of living figures, alleged co-conspirators, and sitting politicians, with absolutely no context explaining how or why they were connected to the files. Critics across the political spectrum immediately called it out for what it appeared to be, a deliberate attempt to muddy the waters, to mix the names of the innocent with the names of the powerful, to make the list so confusing, so absurd, that people would stop taking it seriously. Think about that strategy for a moment. If you can't hide the names, bury them in noise. And then came the hearing. On February 12th, 2026, Attorney General Pam Bondi sat before the House Judiciary Committee for over 5 hours, and sitting behind her in that hearing room, watching every word, every deflection, every excuse, were Epstein survivors. Some of them wore white T-shirts with blacked-out words printed on them. The shirts read, "The truth is, Epstein survivors are still waiting." Democratic lawmakers came prepared and came hard. Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington asked Bondi to turn around right there in that hearing room, face the survivors behind her, and apologize. Not a formal statement, not a press release. Just turn around and look them in the eye. Bondi refused. She called the question theatrics. She said she would not get into the gutter with Jayapal. Jayapal then asked the survivors in the room to raise their hands if they had never been invited to meet with the Department of Justice. Every single one raised their hand. Representative Hank Johnson asked Bondi directly, "How many lives have been derailed because your department was either sloppy and incompetent or willfully trying to intimidate and punish these ladies for coming forward?" Bondi did not answer. Representative Jerry Nadler asked how many of Epstein's co-conspirators the DOJ has indicted since taking over the case. The answer, confirmed by Nadler himself after Bondi stonewalled, 0. Not one indictment, not one co-conspirator was charged, and earlier reports confirmed the DOJ fired the lead prosecutor on the Epstein case, the person who knew this investigation best. But here is the detail that stopped even Republicans in their tracks. A Reuters photograph taken inside that hearing room showed Attorney General Pam Bondi holding a document labeled, quote, "Jayapal Pramila Search History." The Department of Justice had been tracking what members of Congress were searching for as they reviewed unredacted Epstein files. Jayapal herself confirmed, "That was my search history." She had it in a binder. Republicans and Democrats alike erupted. Representative Nancy Mace confirmed that DOJ personnel were physically monitoring lawmakers on computers as they reviewed documents. Representative Jamie Raskin accused Bondi of spying on Congress. Now, here is something important I want you to sit with. This is not just a Democrat versus Republican story, not even close. Republican Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who co-wrote the Epstein Files Transparency Act, confronted Bondi directly. He told her that releasing a list of Epstein's victims' names was, quote, "literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors." He demanded that the DOJ release internal prosecution memos outlining why past decisions were made not to charge Epstein's associates. He demanded the name of billionaire Les Wexner, identified by the FBI as a one-time Epstein associate, be unredacted from the files. Bondi's response to this Republican lawmaker who wrote the transparency law? She accused him of having Trump derangement syndrome. Republican Representative Chip Roy of Texas asked whether anyone else would be prosecuted in connection with Epstein. Bondi said there were pending investigations, but declined to say more. Meanwhile, the DOJ had previously declared in July 2025 that no Epstein client list existed, contradicting Bondi's own earlier statement on Fox News in February 2025, where she said such a list was sitting on my desk right now to review. So, where does this leave us? 3 million pages of documents remain unreleased. The lead Epstein prosecutor was fired. 0 co-conspirators have been indicted. Survivors were exposed in the document dump. Lawmakers were surveilled while reviewing files. The DOJ sent Congress a list that includes long-dead celebrities alongside alleged predators, with no context, and the Attorney General of the United States declared the matter closed. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was passed because the American people, across every political divide, demanded to know the truth about who enabled one of the most prolific sex traffickers in history. That demand has not been met. The survivors who sat in that hearing room in their white shirts with blacked-out words, they are still waiting. And perhaps the most haunting question of all, the one no one in power seems willing to answer on record, is this. If the files have truly been fully released, as Bondi claims, why does it still feel like so much is hidden? This story is not going away, and it should not go away, because at the heart of it are real women, real survivors, who were abused, trafficked, and silenced, and they deserve the full truth. Every page, every name, every decision that was made to let powerful men walk free. So I want to hear from you. Do you believe the DOJ has released everything? Do you think the full truth about Jeffrey Epstein's network will ever come out? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. I read every single one. If this video opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button because we cover the stories that matter, the ones that go deeper than the headlines. And share this video. Share it with someone who thinks this story is over, because it is not. Not even close. The truth is still waiting, and so are the survivors.